So you've selected something with the quick selection tool and now you want to know how to use select and mask. I'll show you how in just a moment. Don't go away. Hi there, I'm Barry Callister from Barry Callister Photography, founder and creator of photographersfreedom.com, giving you the time, gear and skills to be the best photographer you can be. Welcome to my channel. Thank you for watching this video today. My channel is all about photography gear reviews, photography tutorials, Lightroom and Photoshop tutorials, and a whole lot of other photography stuff. So if that sounds good to you, please subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos from me. If you are interested in doing photography as a business, then I suggest you stick around to the end of this video. When I'm finished teaching you about select and mask, I'm going to tell you how you can get started creating your very own business based around your passion for photography. If you've dreamed of having your own photography business, or if you're already doing photography as a job but you want to earn more money from it, then this is going to get you really excited. Right now, let's get into the content. Now this video actually follows on from my how to use the quick selection tool in Photoshop CC video. I've linked it in the cards up the top, so go and have a look at it if you like, but I will show you just the end of it now because this video is going to continue on from where that left off, except we're going to now refine that selection using select and mask. I'm just going to right click inside the selection, and what we're going to do with this is make a layer via copy. So this will just copy this flower and put it on its own layer, and if I turn off the background layer here, you can see we have successfully cut the flower out of this photograph. So if I zoom in, it's not pretty, but it's a start. If I had more time, I would go in and get rid of all this background in here that's been selected and stuff, and I would clean up the stem as well. So here we are in Photoshop and I've got the same image open. If you want to download this image and follow along, there's a link in the video description. So I've made a selection that is fairly similar to the one that we had at the end of that video. And as you can see, it's not a great selection. I've missed a lot of areas on the flower here and also on the stem. So we're going to refine this selection using select and mask. So just come up the top here and we click on select and mask, and that takes us into our select and mask window. Now yours may look different to mine because Photoshop remembers the last view that you were using up here in the views menu, and it will give you that one. So we'll have a look right now at this views drop down and talk about each view. So the on black one, which is displayed right now, just shows your selection on a black layer. So if you were cutting out this flower and putting it onto a black layer, this shows you what it would look like. And you have here underneath an opacity slider, which changes the transparency of the black layer there. Up the top we have onion skin. This just shows you your selection on a transparent background, and you can control the transparency there of that background. Then you have the marching ants, which is what you get using its quick selection tool outside of select and mask. Below that one we have our overlay. This shows your selection as a color overlay, as if you were using quick mask. So, and you can choose the color of that overlay down here by clicking on this little swatch, and you can change the color to whatever you like, green, blue, whatever. I like to leave mine on red. And over here we can choose what that color indicates, so whether it shows the selected areas or the masked areas. So I like to leave it on selected areas, and you can also control the opacity here with the opacity slider. Below that we have black, which we've already talked about. Then there's white, same as black, except the background is now white. So if you're putting this flower onto a white layer, this will help you to see if it's looking good or not. Black and white is the next one. Now that is just showing you your selection as if it were already a mask. And underneath that, all the way at the bottom, we have on layers. Now this shows as transparent at the moment because we don't actually have another layer other than the one that we're selecting from. So if we had another picture in behind this layer, it would show in here in the on layers view. So if we, for example, were cutting out this flower and putting it onto a nice beautiful sunset landscape photo, we would be able to see the sunset in the background and see if our flower is looking good on that or not. So now we'll have a look at all the tools that are available to you in Select and Mask. So over on the left hand side here you have all these icons. These are your tools. Now some of these are going to be familiar to you because you've used them outside of Select and Mask before. You have the quick selection tool, the refine edge brush tool, we'll talk about that one in a minute, the brush tool, the lasso tool, and inside of there you also have the polygonal lasso tool. You can right click to bring those up and then select which one you want. Then you've got the hand tool and the zoom tool. So we'll talk through each one of these right now. So the quick selection tool works the same way as it does outside of Select and Mask. I'll just change back to my overlay here. So it defaults to add to selection. And you can change that either by coming up here to your menu up the top and clicking subtract to selection, or you can simply hold Alt or Option and that will subtract from your selection. So you just click and drag and that will select things, and you can change the size of the tool by either coming up here to the size drop down menu and changing it that way, or you can hold Alt or Option, right click and drag right to make it bigger and left to make it smaller. So that's pretty self-explanatory. It just works the same way it does normally. And up here next to the size option, we also have a sample all layers checkbox. If you check that and you have a document with multiple layers, we only have the one layer here, but if you have multiple layers, that will sample from all of the layers when making a selection. So if you only, for whatever reason, wanted to sample from one layer, you would uncheck that box. Next to that, we have the Select Subject button. Now we're not going to look into that because we've already got a selection. We'll look into that a bit later. Underneath the quick selection tool, we have the refine edge brush. We'll talk about that in a minute. Then we have the brush tool. This is the same as the brush tool outside of Select and Mask. It will just paint your selection in for you. So you just click and drag and you can change whether it adds to the selection or subtracts to the selection up here. You can also change all your brush settings in here. You've got size, hardness, spacing, angle, roundness, all of those things up there. You can also hold Alt or Option, right click with your mouse, drag to the right to make it bigger, to the left to make it smaller, up to make it softer, down to make it harder. And again, you've got your sample all layers check box up here as well, if you have a document with multiple layers. Next, we have our lasso tools. We have the lasso tool and the polygonal lasso tool. These are exactly the same as they are outside of Select and Mask also. You simply click and drag to add to your selection. If you want to subtract from your selection, you hold Alt or Option and it'll subtract. Now it has some controls up here as well. So this is to add to your selection. This is to subtract to your selection, and this is intersect. Now what this will do is it will give you only where the selection you are clicking and dragging and the one you already have intersect. So you can see I've got a selection around that area there. So only the part that is red within that selection will remain when I lift my mouse button. So you can see it gives you whatever was in between those two selections intersecting. And of course you have your sample all layers checkbox up there again. Next you have your hand tool. This is for moving around inside of your image when you are zoomed in. You just click and drag. You can also do this from any of these tools by just pressing the space bar and clicking and dragging. Then you have your zoom tool. Oh sorry, the hand tool has some other options here as well. Scroll all windows, that is something you would click if you had multiple windows open. If you go back into here, you can select window, arrange, and you can come down here and go new window for this document and open another window of it. So that will scroll all the windows when you select that option. So if you did that and you clicked and dragged, it would do the same on the other open windows. Now you can click this button here to zoom to 100%. You can click this one to fit it to the screen, and you can click this one to fill the screen. Pretty easy. So then we move on to our zoom tool. So the zoom tool defaults to zooming in, so it'll be plus when you first open it. You can hold Alt or Option to zoom out. You can also select that up here. Next to this we have resize windows to fit. I have no idea what that does. I've never used that, but I'm assuming it's to do with if you have multiple windows open. Zoom all windows, same thing, that will zoom all of the windows that you have open. Scrubby zoom is where you can hold down your right mouse button, and if you slide to the left, it will go minus. If you slide to the right, it will zoom in. So it'll go out or in like that, and you can click and hold and it will slowly zoom in as well. Or hold Alt and click and it will zoom out. So that's kind of a handy little thing, the scrubby zoom. And again, you have your 100% fit screen and fill screen buttons over there as well. So I want to talk to you now about the Refine Edge brush. So if we come over here to the left-hand side and choose the Refine Edge brush tool. Now what this does is what it says it does, it refines the edge of your selection. So it tries to figure out what is foreground and what is background, or what you want selected and what you don't want selected. So what you can do with your Refine Edge brush is you can just come in here and you can just paint around the edges of your selection, and you see Photoshop will think about it and it will try and learn what is foreground and what is background. So if you paint around there, trying to select all the areas that you've missed, all the way around here we'll go, painting down in there and in there and in there and up in there, and there. I wouldn't worry about the stem of the flower because it's so close to the background in color and contrast. But with the flower head, because it's yellow and the background is mostly grey, it's going to do quite a good job there. So you can see it looks like it's done a good job there in overlay mode, but if we go on black, it's not too bad. On white, not too bad. It's missing a few areas, like in here and there you can see through a few parts. So if we were going to put this on a white background, this would not be great. But you can refine this with your global refinements down here. We'll look into that in just a moment. But what I wanted to talk about was how you can actually do this with these edge detection tools here with the radius and the smart radius. So I'll cancel out of there to go back to our original selection, and I'll go back in again, back to overlay. Now, if I select the Refine Edge brush and I come up here, we've got this Show Edge checkbox. If you tick that and we go to on black, you won't see anything. That is because we haven't defined an edge yet with our radius here. So if I dial this radius up, you can see we start to get an edge here. Now this is the edge where Photoshop is going to analyze and try to figure out what is foreground and what is background, or what we want selected and what we don't want selected. So if I go back to on black, and I'll disable Show Edge, and we will see as I dial up the radius, we will see how Photoshop changes the analyzing of that edge, and it will become very, very different. So you see, the further we go, the more we start to lose. We start to see the background blending in here, and down here in the stem of the flower it starts to blend in, and the stem itself actually gets quite transparent, and you can start to see through it basically, and that's not a really good selection. So this is where you really want to just dial in a pretty good, that looks pretty good right there. That's not too bad. And if you click, I'll go back to Show Edge again, and what happens with the smart radius is what Photoshop will do is it will if I click that, you will see the radius change. This is Photoshop analyzing the refine edge area and deciding what it thinks would be a better area to do. So it will shrink in on straight edges, and on the furry edges of the flower it will kind of expand a little and go, maybe you want to select a bit more of that area. So it's just Photoshop. You're putting Photoshop in control basically with Smart Radius. It will decide what your radius should be for you. So you can do it that way if you want to as well. So let's say we did it that way, and I'll just turn off Show Edge. Now we'll talk about this global refinements here. So you have a smooth slider, a feather slider, a contrast slider, a shift edge, and we'll talk about these two buttons after we've talked about all of that. So what the smooth slider does, we'll zoom into the edge of our stem here. If I dial up the smooth slider, you can see it just makes the edges of your selection really smooth. So in this case we would not want to really use that because we've got a lot of furry bits on the edge of our flower here. If I smooth that out, it'll get rid of all of those and make it look quite unnatural. So we wouldn't use that. You can use it a little bit just to make things look a little better. Now the feather slider will obviously put a feathered edge on your selection, so it'll start to bleed in more of the background or less of the background, so you can kind of dial in what you need there. Then with the contrast slider, what this will do is it will make the edges look a lot sharper. It'll make them look not so soft. So if you dial up the contrast, you can see it's really starting to define those edges. I'll just zoom out a little bit. So if I dial contrast back again, if I start to dial it in, you can see the edges get sharper and sharper and sharper, and then they start to look a little bit horridly jagged, and that is not very good. Because what it's doing, I'll show you by going to black and white. Now you can see in between the black areas and the white areas, we have some areas that are kind of grey. There's all different shades of grey in there as well. So what contrast does, it will take anything that is not black or white and make it darker or lighter. So it'll make blacks blacker and whites whiter. So it'll create that. So you can see all those grey areas in the middle there start to disappear because they're turning to either black or white. So if they're less than 50% grey, they will turn white. If they're greater than 50% grey, they will turn black. So that's what that does, and it makes the edges of your selection look a lot sharper. And then down here you have the shift edge slider. What this does is just shifts the edge of your selection either inwards, as you can see there, or further outwards. So you can move that to wherever you think you need it to be. I'm just going to reset it to 0 there. Now we'll talk about clear selection. Obviously cancels the selection out. Invert, that will change the selection from the background to the foreground. It selects the inverse of what you've already got selected. So this video is getting pretty long, guys, so why don't you have a bit of a break, hit pause, go grab yourself a coffee or a drink of water or a glass of wine, a packet of chips, whatever you like, and come back and we'll get back into it. Hit pause, go on. So now I'll just talk about the output settings down here on the bottom right hand side. So this is what happens to your selection once you shunt it back into Photoshop basically. So decontaminate colors, this is kind of more of a, it's more useful when you've done like a green screen photo of someone, because you know how when you do a green screen shot, sometimes the light will bounce off the green, it will reflect back off the green, it'll create like a green fringe around your model or whatever you've got in there. That's what decontaminate colors tries to remove that. It's Photoshop trying to remove that. If I choose it here, it's going to make the edge look terrible, of course, but it would work better may work better in a different photo. And of course you can change the amount of that. I mean, it's set to 100%. I could dial it back and see what kind of a job it does. So you've got so much control within Select and Mask here to just refine your selection in so many different ways. So we'll turn that off. Now you can output this to so many different things. As you can see, you can output to just a selection. So you can go back into Photoshop with just the selection. You can make it a layer mask, a new layer with a layer mask, a new document, or a new document with a layer mask. So you've got many choices there. And then you've got a checkbox here for remember settings. That will make select and mask remember all of the settings that you've used, and when it opens again next time, it'll have these settings available to you, so you can do that there. And then you've got your reset workspace button down here. This will reset all your controls back to where they were before. So there's all your controls and things within select and mask, so you kind of got an idea now how everything works. What I'm going to do now is I will show you how I personally would refine the edge of the selection that we have here at the moment. So what I'm going to do first is zoom in. I always suggest that you zoom in when you select so that you can see clearly what you're doing. Now, I'm not going to use the refine edge just because of what I said before, how a lot of this object that we're trying to select is similar in color and contrast to the background. So what I'm going to do is I would probably use the brush tool for a little bit. So we'll get the brush tool here. I might make the hardness about 30% or something there, and I'll just click here and I'll click over there and just running around the image and just clicking in different places, just trying to select bits that haven't been selected yet. And I'll go back and sort of fix it up a bit later. Now with an image like this, it's you don't have to be super perfect with your selection, because the edges of a flower can look many different ways. It's not like we're selecting a building or something that has clearly defined edges. This could look, you know, the edges of this flower could have looked anyway, really. It's only us that know the photo that would realize that it has the... So that's the top of the flower done there. I'd probably come down here into the stem as well and get a little bit of this here, and maybe hold Alt and just take that bit out there. And I won't bother with that bit there because that's kind of like a ghosting that's happened because of my lens. I might select a little bit more here, just maybe select this bit here to make it look a little bit more realistic. So that's not looking too bad. If I go to on black, that is kind of fairly good. You've got an area down here around the flower there that's not very good. I could maybe go in there with the brush and just get that out if I want to. And then there's this bit here as well, just get that out. There's a bit here too. Now if you want to get up into areas like that, I suggest you go up here and maybe make your brush a little bit more oval shaped and point it up into the area that you're going, and you can do, oops, hold Alt there, Barry. So you go up in there and just get that. That looks terrible because it's a little bit sharp. I might soften my brush a little bit here. Oh, soften, and we'll just make it a bit smaller and just hold Alt. I'm forgetting about Alt. There we go. That looks a bit more realistic there. And then what I do is probably I just use the global refinements from now on, just to sort of make it look a little bit more realistic. So I'm dialing up the smoothing just a tad, maybe 7. The feather, don't want it too high because we don't want it. That's okay at 1.2 pixels there. We'll dial up the contrast a bit, back a bit perhaps, and I might just shift the edge in a little bit just to make sure that I don't have too much of the background selected. And that is, I mean, we can see if we click show original, that'll show us our original selection, which was pretty rough. And now we have this one. Now, just before I go, I wanted to talk to you about select subject. Now, I'm going to cancel this here. We'll Control D or Command D to deselect that. Now up here next to select and mask, you've got select subject. Now what that will do for you is it will select the subject. If you've got a photograph of a person, for example, on a solid color background, it will do quite a good job of selecting the subject for you. Or if you've got a photo of a bird, for example, flying on blue sky, it'll do a great job of that. Here it probably won't. I will click select subject and we'll see what it does. It's done a good job of the flower up here, but see, it didn't know that we didn't want this bit in here, and it didn't know that we wanted the stem selected too, so we'd have to go in and refine that. So what I do suggest that you do is open select and mask before you select something. We will do this right now, and I'll go back to our overlay view. Marching ants we'll go for. Now what I'm going to do in here is select the quick selection tool, and I will choose select subject this time, and we'll see if it does a better job within select and mask. No, see, it's done exactly the same thing. Sometimes you'll get a better result in here. You will always get a better result with your quick selection tool within select and mask. So I suggest opening the select and mask dialog first, and I'll go to overlay here, I prefer that. And if I just do this around here, this is going to do a really great job, you will see. So I always suggest that you open select and mask first. When I did that last video, it was just more about the quick selection tool than select and mask, so I didn't want to include this, but so you can see I'm making a mess of this, but normally it will do a great job. So then we can just come down the stem of our flower here, and it should do, like I said before, this is a really tricky image because the background and the foreground are so similar. But I'm going to hold Alt and go in there. You can see it's just a lot more powerful within select and mask. So before you select something, hit that select and mask button and go and do it within the select and mask dialog, and it's much, much more powerful, and you'll get a better selection in the end. Now for the really exciting part of this video, for me anyway, I hope for you also. 4 months ago, I was struggling to grow my photography business. As a nature photographer, there's not a great demand for what I do, but I love it. I love nature. When I'm out there in a natural environment with just my camera and a beautiful waterfall or an amazing bird or an incredible animal, that is bliss for me. That is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And why shouldn't I do that? Why shouldn't there be a way that I can do that and make it profitable? So I was searching online for new ways of monetizing my photography. And it was during this search that I came across Six Figure Mentors, or SFM. SFM is an online marketing course, an e-commerce course, an affiliate program, a community. It's so many different things. There's so much value in it, such a huge amount of educational value that it's hard to put a label on it. SFM is how I created photographersfreedom.com by myself with WordPress, having had not much experience with WordPress before. It's also why I'm so driven to releasing so much new content every week here on my YouTube channel and with my blog at Photographers Freedom. And that's one of the great things about this course, is the mental training that they take you through that puts you in the right mindset for your business. The course covers everything from the mental training to website building, SEO, social media, everything you need to know around getting started with your own online business based around your passion. And you're instantly immersed into a community of people like yourself who are driven towards creating businesses around their passion, around what excites them the most. And you will find some photographers in there. And then one of the most amazing things about it is that you're learning to create a business that will give you time and geographical freedom. You won't be stuck working 10 to 12 hours a day. This business will earn you money while you sleep or while you're out taking photos. So if you're struggling, if you're in a job that is draining an incredible amount of time from your life, if you want to be out in nature taking photos for the rest of your days, then this could be the thing for you. I'm not going to stand here and tell you it's easy. It's not. There is a lot of work involved in the beginning, but if you're committed, if you are driven towards achieving this, then you may just be able to create the life you want. A life based on your terms, not someone else's. It's been perfect for me. SFM is the reason I am the person I am right now. It's the reason I am loving getting out of bed every single day and creating content for people like you. It's the reason I am now driven towards helping people like you become the best photographer you can be. So if you're even a little bit curious about it, check it out for yourself. I've put a link in the video description below. This will take you to photographersfreedom.com. There you can read more about SFM. You can watch another video that I made about explaining it and what it's done for me. You can also sign up there from that page with your email address and you will receive 3 free training videos. These videos are presented by Stuart Ross, who is one of the founders of SFM. And in them, he explains more about the amazing opportunities the course offers. It will blow your mind. If you have any questions about it, please contact me via the contact page at photographersfreedom.com or via the Photographers Freedom Facebook page. Those links are also in the description below. Good luck, whatever you choose to do. Until next time, I'm Barry Callister of Barry Callister Photography and Photographers Freedom. Get out there, take some wicked shots, and I'll see you soon.